Okay, folks, let's get started. I'm Kevin Casey. I'm one of the volunteer directors with the St. John's Board of Trade. Thank you, the Honorable Minister Mélanie Joly, for joining us today. You certainly know how to fill a room, even if it's a Zoom room. So obviously, what's that?
It's because Seamus O'Regan is with me, that's why.
No, Seamus can only put 50 in a room. We already tested that. You've got 120, so you've got bragging rights to Seamus. And he's a native Newfoundlander, so good on you. I know Seamus, so I can throw jabs at him. Thank you for being here. This is, I know you've been doing this across Canada, and I think the attendance, we've got 120 people registered for this. Most of them are using their real names. Some of them may be aliases. We can't tell. That's probably the media. But this is an important topic for us. I can tell you, as long as my role is with the Board of Trade, I'm also a business owner for 20 years. And, I think we've all, as Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, lived through recessions and snowstorms and moratoriums. And we've always used creativity and imagination to persevere. But some of the things like that have almost feel like paper cuts to us right now. So I chaired a meeting yesterday with some of the people on the Board of Trade, and we had 67 business owners. And honestly, Minister Joly, the theme I've got from this, and I'll use non-technical terms, is some even smartest business owners I know, they're confused, they're stressed, and they're in this position of being in neutral, which is the worst place to be for a business, even in the best of times. I think they also appreciate how fast the federal government has tried to move on this. And we know it's a fluid situation, so I think everyone is appreciative of that. But even some of the smartest accountants, and I don't like to give accountants too many compliments, but even some of the smartest accountants had a hard time counseling their business clients on what to do next. So we know this is a complex situation. We know you and your team are working extremely hard. But somehow out of this, we would love to understand clarity and speed, because there's some people that are looking at rent payments and mortgage payments that are 15 days away, and things that are 6 weeks away right now seem like an eternity. Yeah. So I'd like to thank you for being out in front of this. I'm not going to take any more time. I know you have some opening remarks. Then we've got a lot of submitted questions that we took from the meeting yesterday, and then from some people were submitted. And then you've also been brave enough to do a Q&A, which we appreciate, and that will be through our chat room. And we really appreciate it. And this is a pivotal time for a province that I think has been hit with more curveballs than anyone else. So go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for your team and to your team and yourself for hosting this. We had conversations last week, and very quickly you turned this around, and thank you for all attending. Obviously, Seamus is on the line, is on this Zoom, and has been an extremely strong supporter and advocate of the reality of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. I know Goody Hutchins also, who emails me pretty much every day and is a strong tourism advocate, is also on this Zoom, and Scott Sims also, who has always been very strong advocating for your part of the country. So I know you guys have gone through hell many times, and this time, we want you to know that we're there to help. And there are three main priorities for the government. So I'll tell you about how the federal government thinks what's going on right now, how's their reading of the situation, and how we're acting. So the first thing is obviously to protect the health of Canadians. We need to stop the spread of the virus, and obviously we need Canadians to be able to follow the strict rules and strict measures that are put forward by our public health officials. And quite frankly, on economically speaking, that's the best way to get out of this crisis as soon as possible. So it is an economic measure to have confinement. So to have strong confinement rules. So that's the first thing. Now, based on that, we knew that we had to help people to allow them to have enough money in their pockets to pay the rent or to pay their mortgages and put food on the table while really following the rules. And so that's why we came up with a new solution, which is expanding the social safety net of the country. And therefore, we now know this is called CERB, the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, the $2,000 per month benefit. And I can answer questions about that. The idea of this benefit, it's basically, we didn't have time within the federal government to start new programs. We just used the tools we had, bearing in mind that we have a public service that is teleworking like all of us. And so we used EI and expanded massively its definition. And so for people that are self-employed, for people that didn't have enough hours on their EI, for parents that had to stay home because their kids are out of school because school is out, or for also people that were sick or taking care of a sick person. Basically, this benefit is for you. And we also made sure that we would send GST credits, and checks will be in the mail really soon. If not, people have already received some. So we're really increasing the amount of tax credits, of GST credits. And also the other thing is we've helped by increasing the Canada Child Benefit by $300 per child. And we've worked with banks to make sure that there would be more flexibility for people that were stuck in terms of repaying their mortgages. And finally, we made some, tax deferrals payments. So later in the year to make sure that people would be keeping their money in the pockets. So that's the second thing we decided to do. And then we came up with the economic package. And so the economic package, the idea is, at first we really saw this crisis as a movement in demand. So basically, demand would not be really strong, maybe mid-March to mid-April, mid-April to mid-May, but and then the demand would start again. So for example, if your furniture, if your business that sells furniture, you could maybe not have any revenues for 2 months, but you could start selling furniture again within 2 months. So therefore, we wanted to have to give more liquidity, more help cash flows of businesses all across the country. That was our reading. And so we worked with the banks at first. We changed some rules to make sure that we would allow $300 billion to flow through our banks by taking more risks on our shoulders, the federal government shoulders, and making sure to push banks to really take more risks. And we helped the BDC and EDC to also have access to more liquidity. So we used really the banking system and loans and things like that. Eventually, a reading of the situation evolved. And the idea was to make sure that we would help through subsidies because this crisis was very important and we needed to adapt even more to the reality of entrepreneurs across this country. So we came up with a wage subsidy of 75% for up to $58,700 per employee. If businesses are able to show that they've incurred 30% of losses. And Kevin, I understand that there's still lots of questions about that. I'll be answering questions about that, and it's a pleasure. Two other things we put in place: the $40,000 loan So if you go to your bank, you're able to have access to it. And if you repay it within 2 years, you'll be able to keep $10,000. So basically it becomes a $10,000 subsidy. And finally, we made sure that there would be tax payment deferral, because obviously we want to make sure that when it comes to businesses' burn rate every month, knowing that there's lots of big costs that are incurred and there's no revenues coming in, well, we wanted to make sure that we could help businesses by, playing our part at the federal government. So this is what we've done. It's an imperfect plan. I think we are going fast, like you were saying, and we're going, we try to cover 80% of the cases. Now, we know that we have to deal with the 20% of other cases that we haven't dealt with, but, speed is really important right now. And so therefore, I think it's an imperfect plan, but we're dealing with an imperfect situation and we're all imperfect. So the idea is to make sure that we can really, really, adapt and change it as we go. And so now I've talked enough, and I would just really like to take questions and basically really help businesses out there.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Minister. We appreciate your opening remarks. My name is Brandon Ellis. I work for the St. John's. Hi, I work for the St. John's Board of Trade. I lead their policy and advocacy. I've got a number of questions for you from our members and from other chambers across the province. But before we get into them, I'd like to offer to those who are on the call to start submitting your questions a little bit early now, and you can do so in the chat box in the Zoom chat here. So just feel free to shoot your questions in there very freely, and we will get to them during the question and answer period if time allows. But Minister, if you're ready, I'd like to get into the first submitted question that we have for you.
Perfect. Let's go, Brandon.
Okay, perfect. Minister, we've heard a lot about flexibility in terms of the wage subsidy. Does the federal government intend to officially define flexibility in terms of measuring a 30% income reduction required for the wage subsidy program? Is there going to be any flexibility there?
Well, yes, and the Prime Minister in his daily address just said it 10 minutes ago. So now businesses will be able to compare, show their losses, their 30% of losses based also on January and February of this year. So that's one thing. And they will need for the month of March to show only a 15% reduction. So like I was saying, things are moving very quickly. We are in the midst of doing this, Brendan. Why? Because we're drafting a legislation. And this legislation will be tabled as soon as possible. We hope, let's cross our fingers, this week. Because at the end of the day, this wage subsidy option cannot be offered to people if it's not passed before the House of Commons and also the Senate. So that's why we're fine-tuning it. And, that's very helpful. The other thing also is it's always, you have to show your losses from March 15 to April 11, and, so it's half month by half month. So that's also helpful for businesses that are trying to show that they've incurred 30% of losses.
Okay, perfect. And thank you for that that information update. We all appreciate that. That's great news. Minister, we have a longer question here, and it's from Natty, our friends in technology and innovation, and a few other members have expressed this concern as well. A follow-up to our wage subsidy question that we just asked. Yeah. The 75% wage subsidy as the criteria of a 30% drop in revenue to qualify, obviously changing now as we speak, but meaning many organizations that need it will not qualify for the support. Many new startups, pre-commercial properties, software service companies, and high growth firms won't qualify under this criteria, meaning they'll have to lay off staff, unfortunately. Our friends at Natty believe that this will put the technology and innovation sector back several years, losing momentum that they have been building in Atlantic Canada. is the federal government willing to work with organizations such as NATI and the tech sector and with business in general to expand the criteria for the wage subsidy program? Is this something that government's working on?
Yes, well, we had good conversations throughout the Atlantic also about how to protect our startups and really, you know, protect also startups in the technology sector. You know, I know that you have some strong companies out of St. John's in the sector. Now, for startups, if you you started a company since February of 2019, okay, well, obviously it's difficult for you to show your losses. So we'll be going, you know, by a case-by-case basis, on a case-by-case basis, and putting in place a normal type of benchmark that would be that would be basically allowed right now. What I think people should be doing is going on the CRA website and registering themselves on my business account, and basically already doing that and making sure that they can show their own specific realities. And so, yes, we are very much aware of the startup issue, and that's why we've tweaked it to make it work for them.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Shifting topics a little bit, we've got this question from a few members, as well as some of our student members of the St. John's Board of Trade as well. Most students and recent graduates are facing a fairly bleak future right now, given the global pandemic, with no near income potential in the labor market as we speak. Will the federal government consider providing access to EI or the CERB for students or recent graduates?
So it's already the case if you've you know, earned $5,000 at least in either in 2019, okay? So you have then access to the CRB, or at the beginning before March 15 in 2020. Now, this doesn't cover students that haven't worked in the past, for example, during the summer last year. And therefore, this is something that we know is happening, and we're working on solutions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Minister, a renewed economy following this pandemic will need to be efficient in order to rebound quickly. Will the federal government commit to supporting a commission on a comprehensive review of the nation's tax system to reduce the complexity and increase fairness of taxation within this country? This, if you may recall, the Senate Committee on Banking, Trade, and Commerce recommended this in 2018, and it has also been endorsed by the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Is this something that the federal government would consider?
Well, I think what we did as a government was to lower taxes on SMEs, on small businesses. That's was one of the first things we did, and so that's a first thing. Second thing, if we've been working with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce and many other organizations across the country, and quite frankly, what they asked for in this time was wage subsidies, and we came up with a very strong wage subsidy program. And so at this point, I think we have to deal with this situation as it is before us right now. And we will have a great conversation as how to deal with the recovery afterwards.
So the door is not closed on a tax commission moving forward in the future.
That it is the first question I'm having on this. Of all the hundreds of phone calls and Zooms I've done, I think people want answers to what they are going through right now, because these are very anxious times, and this is a very important economic crisis.
Sure thing. Minister, in an era where most transactions occur on credit, will the federal government consider interceding with banks and credit card companies to reduce the cost of merchant and point of sale fees?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is something Bill Morneau, the Minister of Finance, has been working a lot on. And the 6 CEOs of chartered banks have said to the government and to the Prime Minister that they would be more flexible. They would be allowing, more payment deferrals and lowering interest rates on different types of loans. We have received the confirmations of 2 banks that they would be reducing by 50% their interest rates on credit cards. So that's a good start. But we need to continue to work with them and, quite frankly, to push them. Now, my question to you, Brandon, and all the people that are watching us is, we have that commitment on the part of the banking CEOs, the bank CEOs. How is that translated on the ground in St. John's, in Gander, in Corner Brook? How are entrepreneurs accessing liquidity through their own banks, and how is the bank manager really dealing with this? Do you see more flexibility? Do you feel that there's openness? This is something definitely I want to hear about. Goody Hutchins has been flagging me some issues, and so that's why I want to make sure that I get good feedback from you guys on this.
So, Minister, what I'll ask everyone on the call to do that your question pertains to, send me an email after this call concludes with an answer to your question, Minister. And any of our participants, I will forward it along to your office, any answers that they give me.
Perfect. Good.
Minister, this is a unique question that came up on our town hall meeting yesterday. There are currently some labor market concerns with trying to re-offer workers their jobs at the present time. Some businesses are finding it hard to compete when they're paying workers $13, $14 an hour. It's generally not much of a difference in their take-home pay between what they're making and the CERB. How does business get workers to come back into the workforce when government's programs are not making it worthwhile to return? They're very good programs for those workers.
I hear that. I've been hearing that a bit across the country, and quite frankly, as a government, we wanted to have a strong social safety net. That was in order for nobody to fall into the cracks. Now, obviously, the wage subsidy is a good way to really help get back your workers. And at the end of the day, the CERB is for 4 months. The economic crisis will stop. We will be able to contain the virus, and we'll have to bounce back. And I think that more employers are able to show their goodwill and at the same time work with their employees to keep that link, that relationship that is so important, better it will be. Because at the end of the day, it is creating a lot of anxiety within employees to not have a job at the end of this crisis. It is better to know that you'll be working. And so, the CRB is not just an EI program. It is a program that is due to the emergency. And so that's why I think when businesses can offer wage subsidies and access the program, they can also not only keep that relationship, but I would say make sure that there are the benefits of the employees are kept, like insurance coverage, and that's also another additional argument to have to keep that rather than sending everybody to CRB.
Great, thank you for the answer. Minister, this question here came from, or next I should say, came from one of our chambers in central Newfoundland and Labrador, but it was also brought up on a call that we had with the Atlantic Chamber of Commerce a few weeks ago, and you expressed some level of interest and support for this measure here. How's government planning to work with chambers of commerce and other not-for-profit groups that are looking to avail of government programs but are having a difficult time proving the 30% revenue decrease? Is there any plans at all to work with chambers moving forward and provide assistance?
So, Brandon, chambers of commerce have never been so important to their members and to the government, because you guys can organize your members and you can give us clear recommendations on what are the interests of your members and what you guys are looking for, and we can adapt. And we need that feedback. And at the same time, it is a great platform for Seamus, Goody, Scott, and I to be able to talk to your members. We're all in, physical distancing, social distancing right now. Now, this wage subsidy applies to non-for-profits and therefore can apply to the chamber. And we will go on a case-by-case basis. So I think it's worth it that you talk with your COA people in St. John's to see how we can help you out.
Well, there's a lot of them on the call today here, so we look forward to future conversations with them.
I love the ACOA people.
They're great. Minister, we'll move on to the next question then. Minister, will the CERB become open to business owners who pay themselves dividends and do not draw a salary and do not have $5,000 of previous employment income? Is that something that government might be working on?
Yeah, we took care of that, so it's okay. That can be done as long as it's $5,000 earned either through wage, through salaries, and or dividends. It doesn't matter. Dividends is okay. Basically, this is basically you can have access to the CRB. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Minister, has the federal government given any consideration to providing guarantees for provincial borrowing, as many provinces right now are approaching borrowing limits? I'm sure you have seen our financial situation here in Newfoundland and Labrador. Has the federal government given any consideration towards that?
I know that the Minister of Finance has been in contact with, your own Minister of Finance. I've been in close contact with Bernard Davis many times. We text each other and we're in close contact. And Seamus has been very strong within cabinet to advocate for, the economic reality of people in Newfoundland and Labrador. That's why we're able to, strike the Hibernia deal a year ago. Imagine that, it's already been a year. But we're very much aware that there's a very difficult situation in Newfoundland, and that creates a lot of anxiety within, people living in Newfoundland. Obviously, you hear from my accent, I'm not from Newfoundland, I'm not from Atlantic Canada, but I'm the Minister of ACOA, working with strong MPs, working with Seamus also, and we'll be an ally in making sure that you guys are well taken care of, for sure.
We appreciate that.
Do you mind, maybe I'll just intervene on that very briefly, Mel, not to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
But let's just say that conversations between the province and the federal government are all consuming. It's not even a matter of being aware of the situation. We are intimately involved in working through the finances of the province right now. Finance officials are working hand in glove with financial officials at Confederation Building. They were actually meant to fly in, and of course times change, but they're just doing it all virtually. We will, right now, obviously we're concentrating on public health, but there's a whole slew of people, including, a fair chunk of my time, that are trying to get ready for what it will look like once we start to come out of it. I mean, there's no question that, the situation's pretty stark. I remind my friends in Alberta, I mean, as tough as Alberta has it, we are even more exposed to oil prices than they are, and more vulnerable. And the entire cabinet is well aware of it. The Prime Minister is well aware of it. We're already working on what after this will look like. I mean, right now we're concentrating on just getting through this right now, but the more that we can keep intact, the more we keep businesses intact. And as Mel already said, we began this very speedy, knowing that we would create a lot of cracks that businesses and people would fall through. The CERB and the wage subsidy, I would say 1 week, 2 weeks after they were introduced, look very different already. We were moving on the fly. As Mel just said, the Prime Minister just made an announcement that changes things considerably. Just to reiterate again, so companies now can compare their lost revenue to what they made in January and February of 2020 and will only need to show a 15% decline in March. I know that Craig Rowe, already mentioned in the chat room that that's not, what's the story on what we call pre-revenue companies. And that's, a lot of IT, a lot of mining exploration. So that's why my department is particularly seized with this. A lot of clean tech companies too. We're looking at what we can do with startups and pre-revenue companies. We're very, very much alive to that, and we're working on it. Sorry, Mel.
Thank you, ministers.
Great interventions as always.
We appreciate the intervention. Minister, we have a more niche question here, but still an important one from our membership. There are approximately 24,000 travel agents across Canada right now, the majority of whom are self-employed, home-based agents, and it's fair to say that all of them have been significantly impacted by this pandemic. The way they get paid is outside the norm. They get paid around the time their clients travel on their vacations. So an agent might book a trip in September but not get paid for it until the following April or May. Agents will be creating very few of any bookings within the foreseeable future. The CERB benefit requires recipients to have no income. Will travel agents be disqualified from this benefit because of commissions that are being paid now for bookings that were made months ago? Is government considering or working on provisions that will assist commission-based workers like travel agents?
Okay, so this is a very specific question, and I'm also in charge of tourism, and so this is something we've been looking at. What I can tell you now is that in order to have access to CRB, you have to, have been without employment, or also, no self-employed income for the past 14 days. And so, therefore, for afterwards, for subsequent periods, you must expect to have no employment or self-employment income. So that's the idea. Now, so that's good for the employees of the travel agents, but for basically the wage subsidy, this is still something we've been looking at and working on. Like Seamus just referred to it, we've been moving extremely fast and making sure that we adapt, but there are certain services, certain sectors of the economy and certain types of business that we still need to work on. And it would be a pleasure for me to send you, Brandon, also more specific information as we go through this, and you can send it to the members that are affected.
Thank you very much, Minister. That's appreciated. Minister, I only have one question left on my list here to ask you, and it's about some information that just came out this week, and it would directly put, in our analysis, would directly put money back into the hands of business. This week, the Parliamentary Budget Officer released a cost analysis of a full refund of GST to business. For a refund of 6 months, it would cost the government roughly $6.5 billion. For a full year, it would cost about $13 billion. Is this something that government is considering for small and medium-sized businesses, or is this not at the time?
Listen, I've talked to you about the fact that we started with loans. We kept the liquidity, loan solution. We came up with wage subsidies. That's a new approach. And then afterwards, we went through tax deferral. So that's our stabilization package right now. And we know that there are other sectors of the economy that we will have to do something specific. We are actively engaging with different stakeholders and between different ministers about what can we do for the oil and gas sector, what can we do for the tourism sector. These two sectors have been massively impacted, so these are things that we're working on. The other thing also is obviously there will be a stimulus package in order for us to bounce back, and in that context. Yeah. Brandon?
Yeah, are you still there, Minister?
Yeah, I'm there. The line has been chopping.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, do you want me to start it, did you hear my answer or not?
Last 10 seconds, maybe.
Okay, so what I was saying is, so obviously we're in a stabilization mode right now. So we want to, everything that is happening is about how we deal with the wage subsidy, how we can make sure that we have strong economic measures to stabilize. We know certain industries are more impacted. Certain industries such as oil and gas, such as tourism, have been more impacted. And so that's why there's been discussions going on. Seamus is involved, I'm involved with the finance minister. And as these discussions continue, we'll make sure to inform Canadians. But quite frankly, wanted to have the broadest approach as possible right now. Strong social safety net, impact on all the businesses possible. And also, while we're working on that stabilization package, and we can help businesses flatten that curve even at the economic level, well, we will be working on a stimulus package in order to bounce back. And I take good note of your idea, because obviously many options are on the table.
Great. Minister, thank you very much. We appreciate all of your answers to the questions. We've got a lot of questions coming in the chat box,
Yep.
so I'm going to just pick one of them right now. First one that I'm seeing. Okay, Minister. Working with the Community Business Development Corporation, it's from one of our members on the call, much of the client base is considered high-risk entrepreneurs. Are there financial measures in place for support for these small businesses as they are now operating at a greater risk? Many have inquired and have been told that they don't qualify under the BCAP programs. Is there anything for those businesses?
So I'm a big fan of the Communities Futures program because it's administered through a COA, and it's very, very helpful. And so we haven't got an increase in the budget yet. You know, if this is something that people in Newfoundland and Labrador would love to, you know, have, it would be great to have conversations with Seamus Goody, Scott Sims, and myself about this, because definitely we're good allies.
Perfect. Thank you, Minister. Minister, this is from the Canadian Mental Health Association, by the looks of it. In terms of federal financial support for small business, as a result of the pandemic, is the federal government making a distinction between small private businesses, operations, social enterprises, and nonprofit community agencies, such as the Provincial Canadian Mental Health Association? So is there a distinction between them in terms of federal financial support?
Yes, so different things. We're helping the non-for-profit sector through different means, the wage subsidy, and obviously, like I was saying, have good conversation about ACOA, how to make sure that you present your right demand to the CRA. And second thing is not only having access to wage subsidy, but we've been helping directly certain non-for-profits that are really key, like United Way, for example. Now, if there is an issue because you know, non-for-profits don't have access. Can you hear me, Brandon?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So if there are certain non-for-profits that can't have access to help, please let us know. We need to be able to support you in these difficult times, because your work is extremely important right now. And so, you know, we will help you go through this maze, which is sometimes the federal government, but more than that, we'll see how we can have good conversations with finance on this. This is really, really important. And so we very much know that the reality of businesses and non-for-profits is different, but at the end of the day, we need to adapt to both situations.
Okay, perfect, Minister. And I just got a note that from one of your staff that we're running short on time a little bit, and we realize that you have a busy schedule, and we thank you very much for coming out and speaking to us on this call today. Before I turn it back over to our moderator, our host here, Is there any other good news from the government that you'd like to share with our members that we didn't cover today?
Well, guys, I think we hear your pain. We know it's very difficult, and you know, we're there to help. We're an ally in this, and you know, all the caucus members there, Seamus and I think also that, like you started by saying, Kevin started by saying that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have gone through many difficult times, and this is no exception. I think also that confidence in the recovery is fundamental, because business is, yes, based on direct revenues, direct input, and so direct data, but it's also based on emotions and confidence and trust in the system. That's how even our financial markets work. And so I think if we can pull each other together, work together, we can, provide the most information we can, provide the more certainty we can, because we know businesses need certainty, and making potentially another conference like this, Brendan, in a couple of weeks, to get the feedback, to follow up on what we've done. I think it's the best way. And at the end of the day, keep it up. We're there to help, and we're definitely in listening mode, because we know that this is a crisis like we've never seen before. And so this is testing our resilience and our strengths. So thank you.
Minister Joly, thank you. I did see the question that I knew we had in, but I pretended I didn't see it. So Brandon, you're way more honest than me, because I didn't mind if you were late for your next meeting. But one question I did have from someone who's a tourism operator is, do they open this season? Like, they're literally talking to their staff now. Do they open? And as you know, Newfoundland Labradors, one of our greatest assets is our tourism product and our record numbers over the last number of years. This is a question being asked right now as we're on this call.
Yeah, and Goody has been raising that issue with me a lot, and I'm very much aware that we need to have an approach for the tourism sector that works, and that the wage subsidy needs to work for the tourism sector, because it's a seasonal sector. Basically, it's difficult to show the 30% loss. The new thing that the new announcement of the Prime Minister today may have an impact. I would love to hear your perspective, Kevin, on that and of the tourism sector. If that's helping, let me know, because this is fresh out of the oven.
Right.
And obviously, like I was saying with Seamus, oil and gas, tourism are certainly things that we're having different conversations about also. So I hear.
Minister Joly, we would love to take you up on your offer to do this again, because I know it's a fast-moving situation, and just again a reminder that 90% of the businesses that are the rocket fuel of Newfoundland Labrador are less than 6 people.
Yeah.
They don't have financial advisors to go to. We need to somehow try to simplify a very complex program, and I know there's really smart people in Ottawa, but we got to find a way to plain speak this a little bit and find out where is that door that people line up to, because it's confusing when you're in the middle of trying to save your business, manage your business, and grow your business all in the same day. And that's what the Newfoundland Labrador business community is doing. I think for Seamus, thank you, and we need you to be the loudest and proudest voice for Newfoundlanders in the room. So we're going to count on you like no other time, and I know Goody Hutchings is the same way. And we will do this again. So thank you very much for your time and being able to face people straight out versus being in hiding, because silence is a bad thing right now. So thank you so much.